Oh my god.
Oh, it's really the perfect beat.
It is.
I really love that.
It's a
So
perfect
soothing.
beat. Shout out to Nair B for providing us with that beautiful sound. So, こんばんは. Welcome to Commu. So this is our very first time doing this. To explain, Commu is a multi-channel social justice platform based in Japan, and we're trying to create this sort of like new age, inclusive, experimental social justice community. So without further ado, we want to do something I think maybe different from what's all typically done in Japan in these spaces. So like Sophia had this idea of having like community agreements of how we want to operate and navigate as a community. So maybe you can start off with that.
So yeah, just before we even introduce ourselves, I'm just going to quickly shout out Pass the Mic, which is a student-run radio show / community / artistic platform for BIPOC, people with disabilities, international students, immigrants, refugees, LGBTQIA+, and economically disadvantaged communities on Skidmore College's campus. So they do this thing, they have a podcast, and they start with community agreements. And we thought we'd start with that because I think it'll ground us in this space and kind of frame our conversation a little bit. So feel free to jump in at any time because there's 5 and I'm going to be talking for a bit. So at any point, if I'm talking for a long time, speak over me.
Okay.
So first, speak from the I. We're all different people coming from different backgrounds with different perspectives. So I think for a conversation like this, it's important that I talk from the I. So when I'm talking about an experience, it's clear that I'm talking about my own. 2, respect boundaries and personal limits. That's something that we might not know going into this, but something that we can have on our brains and have on our minds, and just be aware that boundaries and personal limits exist so that we feel comfortable kind of like speaking our discomfort and not assuming that we know everything about each other. 3rd is recognizing intention versus impact. We could go into this so deeply.
We need to have like a whole episode dedicated to intention versus impact. Yeah. Maybe episode 2.
Exactly, yeah. And just in a nutshell, basically, I didn't come into this room wanting to insult anyone, offend anyone, but that doesn't mean I can't do it. And kind of owning that and knowing that all of our actions do have an impact. And so being able to take accountability for ourselves and each other. 4, approach each conversation from a position of learning and unlearning. If anyone else wants to jump in on this too, because we did talk about this a little bit.
Yeah. Either of you want to talk about this one?
If not, I kind of put you all on the spot, even though I said I would read all of them, so it's fine. But I guess ultimately kind of calling each other in instead of calling each other out, kind of related to the last 3 that I talked about. We're all learning and growing, and that's a lot of what Commu is about. So just knowing that that's what we're here to do. And so just being aware that, we still have a lot to learn, and that's why we're here. Yeah. And last, engage one another as whole beings, recognizing our individual backgrounds and experiences, and that includes addressing our proper pronouns. And I'm realizing I might not have been speaking into the mic the entire time.
No, we could hear you.
Okay, good.
Your voice is beautiful and crystal clear, girl.
Thank you. So I feel like that's a smooth transition into the first question.
So the first question is, how are you guys? But I want you to answer in the form of like what animal you feel like today.
Oh boy.
Ooh, I like that.
So, or like you can go into bugs as well.
Okay,
like,
so
we don't
we're
discuss
all
plants?
living organisms?
Yeah.
Plants?
as long as it's living, breathing. Yeah.
Sure.
I feel like a beluga whale today because I just feel like I'm on a wave, but like I'm in my own zone. Does that make sense?
Girl.
Wow.
I didn't know we were
Nice.
coming here
Like
to
you're
like
individual
spit
but
straight
collective.
I'm like forgetting what animals are. I'm like,
what is an animal to begin with?
I'm gonna
That's
have
true.
yeah.
We're animals too.
I feel like
No.
a caterpillar.
Oh.
Yeah. like I'm not really sure what I'm doing, but I know that I'm here for a purpose. Like caterpillars are just like figuring their thing out, and then one day they're like, okay, we're gonna cocoon. We're gonna become a cocoon, and then they just chill in the cocoon, and voila, they come out as a freaking butterfly. I'm like,
That's beautiful.
So I'm pre-cocoon caterpillar right now.
The cocoon.
Yeah,
It's a good place.
Yeah, it's a good place.
I think I feel like, okay, I think it's a jackfruit, you know, the spiky ones, the colorful ones, but like at night.
What happens at night?
It's just darker, you know, like I don't feel
Like the mood
like
is
the
different?
bright energy, like the pink of a jackfruit, but like the darker shade, like the ちょっとlike 落ち着いてる
yeah.
version, like
Of a
in the
jackfruit.
summer air
Jackfruit,
kind of
wow.
thing.
Does
Yeah.
that taste different?
I don't know.
I don't
I've
know.
never even eaten a jackfruit. I'm gonna be honest.
I haven't even seen a jackfruit in jackfruit form. Like I've seen it in like a vegan burger, like fake pulled pork, but it's like pulled jackfruit.
I've never
know?
even heard of that. There's so many. Wow.
Wow.
Wait, you
Amazing.
mean like in the whole being form? Like, what do you mean by the jackfruit form?
I guess we'll answer that question next time, so stay
Okay.
tuned.
I can try to like doodle it.
Sophia keeping
I'm
us on
keeping you on
track.
track.
Yeah, thank you.
And I'll just end with the only thing that I could think of when you said that was slug, which it sounds really negative, but I don't think it is.
I don't think it is.
I've been feeling just like slow moving this week,
Yeah.
but I really, I like where we're all approaching from unbelievably different places right now. I feel like that energy is really funny.
Yeah.
So we have a jackfruit, beluga whale, slug, caterpillar.
Wow.
There you go for anyone who's keeping track.
Should be a movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Pixar sponsor.
That's Rachel's next animation.
I mean,
No, but for real, Disney sponsor us. Anyways.
So, want to move to the next question?
yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So, yeah, let's get weird with this too. Who are you?
Yeah, finally introduce ourselves.
Yeah, like how? Okay, well, I guess we did kind of do that. Well, how did you all get here today then?
Mm-hmm.
How did you find Commu?
Mm.
Mm.
Me personally, I was on Instagram as usual and like clicking through, and like I was getting frustrated that I'm like just sitting like clicking through not doing anything, and then I got to Lay's story and I was like, oh, like I can speak Japanese and I can do English, like, and not like, or I can do Japanese enough and I can speak English, so like this is some way I can help and like be active. So that is how I found Commu.
Mm-hmm. What's your name, girl?
My name?
It's a secret.
It's Rachel.
Hi,
My name is
Rachel.
Rachel. I get eager sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, like, my name is Lay. So, yeah, I've had this idea like brewing in my head for like a while, and I've already Ami and I had talked about it for a few times across the past few months. It was a completely different thing. Originally, it was more of a storytelling focused platform for creatives that are based in Japan. But then when everything with Black Lives Matter erupted, I mean, it's ongoing, right? It's an ongoing struggle. It's been ongoing for centuries. But when this current like heat and energy erupted in the U.S. and it kind of just contagiously just traveled around the world, yeah, it was like this sense of like, okay, what am I doing? Like, what can I do from here? Like, what is my purpose and like what is my quote unquote lane in this movement? And you know, there are a lot of things I'm bad at, but one thing I think I'm good at is connecting people. And I've always felt like that is where everything starts, right? When like people connect, when networks are built, like every movement, every community is based upon a network. And so I'm like, okay, you know what? Like, let's just do this. And so I posted on Instagram, hey, like I can't do this on my own. Do any of you guys like want to help me out with this? And yeah, and this is how we're here now. This like decentralized as in like, yes, it was my idea, but it's not my thing. Like we're a flat, non-hierarchical community all of us are equal stakeholders, equal, like in business terms, like shareholders. Like we all equally have a stake in this, because on a broader scale, we all equally have a stake in our own communities, right? And so, you know, that's kind of how I found myself here today with all of you. Yeah.
Oh, everyone's looking at me, so. I found Commu, like Lei and I have been talking about it for a while, and I always thought it was really interesting. And I think it's a really great space for social activism. Is that how you call it? Activism, social activism.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know. I feel like just in general, like there's been a lot of information that's been floating about, and I think that's really good. But I also wonder, like, how do we reach more people? How do we explain different types of identities? How do we explain Black Lives Matter in Japan? How can we do that visually? How can we do that through sound, through video, whatever it may be? So yeah, that's kind of why I wanted to be in this space and to be here with all of you guys. Yeah. Oh, and I'm Amaya. Yeah. I don't talk like this. I don't know why I'm talking like this.
It's like so
like it.
so soft.
Your
Is this
ASMR
your
voice.
your
Smooth. It's the
radio,
radio
voice?
voice.
Yeah.
It's like,
I like it.
it's like sultry.
Thank you.
Do it. Yeah. I guess kind of to just, I don't know, I feel like we're kind of jumping around. We have no structure.
Like we did,
yeah,
but
we
like
did,
we're like,
but it's like
we're
it makes
just
more
gonna go
sense
off
to
the rails,
know.
but that's how we do it, you know.
How else, you know? I feel like, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna, as I say that, me flipping the page and like ironing it down. But I feel like that kind of made me want to think about. So I'll start off. I'm Sophia, Sophia Secchi Fox. I guess it kind of made me think about like what Commu means to me, and kind of touch on that a little bit, because I think like the reason we're all here and we talked about this, I think like before getting to this point, I think what was really cool is this is not where we intended to be at all. We kind of met over, like I also found Lei's post on Instagram and had no connection to any of you at all. I moved to Japan a month and 10 days ago. Hello, newbie to Tokyo. Thank you.
Yes.
And yeah, I think just like I think all of us have had experiences with our Japanese identities in whatever shape or form that takes, that kind of brought us here and brought us together because we felt like there was something missing, and like in some ways feeling like a strong attachment to this country and this city, but then also feeling like it was falling short of something we were all looking for. And I think all of us coming from totally different angles again and totally different places, but like that's why we were all together. And I feel like the first few times we met, we would have these like FaceTimes for like 3 hours, mostly commiserating, but also kind of like therapy sessions, being like, oh, you experienced that too. But then also being like, wow, I've never experienced that all. And kind of like that realization that we're all coming from like really, really different experiences. And that like in some way for each of us, or I'll speak from the I. For me, I guess like Black Lives Matter, it's like I'm from New York City. I lived there my whole life. And so I don't know kind of exactly what the culture is in Tokyo in a lot of ways, having not grown up here. But like the Black Lives Matter movement being something that's important to me, but also me being a half Asian, half white woman, making that kind of an experience that is in some ways outside myself, even though it was part of my life growing up in having Black friends and being around Black people. But yet like I'm still from the outside of that in some ways, but then being like, that doesn't mean I don't support it, but always feeling like that was something that was not a conversation I would ever be able to have in Japan, like with my relatives who live in Yamagata. Shout out to Yamagata.
Yeah, Tohoku energy.
Oh, I ended
Yes.
up there once by accident, but that's another story.
How do you end up
Say
in
the
a
accent.
That sounded so
Accidentally.
mysterious.
In the Inaka. But yeah, I think that was something we all talked about, being like, how do we have this conversation within specifically our own individual Japanese communities, and like what will that conversation look like when we all have, at least for me, like I can speak in Japanese, but my reading and writing is maybe first grade level. Like that's giving myself a lot. I don't even know if I could like write first grade kanji. I'm trying, I'm learning, I have the workbooks, but yeah.
You know, what you were saying about, you know, how when we first all like connected. I mean, right now there are 4 of us here, but we have 4 or 5 other people that couldn't be here today that are all part of Commu. We have Yasmin, who's in London. Misa, she's out there in Virginia. We have Kay in Kyoto. Amy, who's also based in Tokyo. And so like we have all of these like amazing people that connected digitally, that we found one another digitally. And we were, like all brought together by this like collective sense of both like hopelessness and hopefulness. And I felt so many like, I don't know, like opposing feelings. And I always do when it comes to social justice. It's like, what am I doing? Am I doing enough? And then on the flip side of that, the inner mother in me is like, to my inner child, like, you are doing enough. You're doing everything you can do. And I think like that kind of energy is so present in our space too. Which I guess like what does Commu mean to you question, right? It's like, yeah, it's a social justice movement. Yeah, it's a social justice platform, but first and foremost, it's a community. And we're trying to like, I'm trying to, through this space, envision and realize a community that I don't see in Japan, that I don't see in Tokyo. Something where we don't feel like, people don't feel pressured and like flattened and squashed by all of these like oppressive systems, by grind culture and hustle culture and toxic capitalism and all of these like systems that we don't have the language in Japan to talk about and to talk about on a daily level. Like, how can we start to do that work? And so yeah, like I have like dreams about Commu. Like I've been like having like hella dreams about Commu.
Sick.
It's wild.
What was the coolest one?
I like had a dream that like we had our own like village.
Wow.
It
I
was
could see
I
it.
feel like that was because of Yasmin's post. Did you see her thing about us all running away to a commune or something?
Yes, I mean, one of the like the word Commu was inspired by like communicate, commune, and community, hence Commu. My mom said it sounds like communism. And I'm like, well, well, funny you say, maybe. But yeah, we're kind of like jumping all over, but I guess since
sorry, that
we're
was my
around,
bad.
like, what does Commu mean to you? Like, you know, do you want to take it over?
So, I'm going to describe what Commu is to me by describing like what I like about it. Is that how you describe things anyways?
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I really like it's even down to like the colors we use in the logo. Like it's a calm, it's soothing, it's like a grounding space with like that kind of energy, welcoming, you know, anyone can come and like talk, participate, contribute if they want, or like teach, you know. It's just the space that's just from like pure appreciation and respect and like kind of, it's not taking the individual out necessarily. Maybe it's like you're taking the ego out because you know we're trying to, you know, connect people from so many different realms of Tokyo and, you know, create strong relationships and like a community, you know, like spread it out to every part possible. And then like within that community, like the only goal is for like everyone to help each other like be their best and like feel their best and like feel like love and appreciation. And also to like and then also everyone's kind of going towards the same goal of like wanting to spread that, you know, and like do the right thing, like, you know, actively do work towards an actual like fair world, like a, you know,
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I like that that's kind of like the North Star or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then like along the journey, we're like, you know, building up communities.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I like the way you said like the North Star. Like, we have this like compass. It's almost like we were all like looking at the same thing, and that all drew us to each other. That's what brought us here. Like, I feel like even like this happening, we have like so many people here right now, like all of our friends are here. And like, in a way, I'm just like, yo, like we're all following that North Star, you know, we're all here because we all like, speaking for the we a lot, yo, but like I'm here because I want to follow that path. Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm gonna think about that a little more.
Yeah, I definitely think what you were saying too, just like kind of like doing that work. And I feel like we've all kind of talked about what it means to do work and how that's work is sustained and how that's like active engagement. And especially because there are a lot of conversations about allyship and that kind of thing right now. In our own ways, like through Commu, for me, I feel like it's about doing kind of like internal work and internal growth. And I don't know, I guess putting myself out there and like all of us, like I guess that's kind of what we're doing right now in this space. It's like we all don't know the right thing to say, the right thing to do, but we're all here and we're all speaking. And I think that like hopefully it kind of allows others to feel like they have I guess not inspire feels like really obnoxiously from above, but I guess it's like to show people that they should take up space, and like that's what we're all trying to do is just take up some space to create space for others, and just kind of see where we go from there. But
I like what Rachel said about not having an ego in Commu. I think that's really important. Like I've seen like kind of try to build this for months. Then eventually she like said online, she was like, I can't do this alone. And I think that's a really important statement because I don't know, like I think like when you talk about difficult topics or when I talk about difficult topics and when I've seen other people talk about it, I'm sure like I'm not alone in this thought, but it is hard to describe these things. It is hard to describe your own traumas. It is hard to describe even something like microaggressions. What does that mean in Japan? Things like that. And it's nice that there's this community of people to help and to create these conversations and to expand it beyond ourselves or to whoever's also willing to listen. Because I think that's important instead of being like, oh shit, how do I do this by myself, right? And so I think that's what Commu means to me, is that community of people who are similar minded but can also bring in different perspectives and then grow together. It's like a sunflower.
Loving these metaphors. I'm like writing this. I mean, you know, this, I think one of the things I realized when well, let me backtrack. So even before the Black Lives Matter movement kind of was reignited last month, part of me that is here right now was dormant for, I would say, about a year since I left university, since I left Japan. And I didn't even realize that it had become dormant. And I think what it was is that, you know, when I was in school, it was this small liberal arts school, right? Everything, we talk about everything. Like we will wreak havoc the moment we see something fucked up, right? And so it was like, the kind of conversations we're having right now, that was everyday talk. Like you wake up, you go to a cafe with your friend, and that's what you're talking about. In classes, that's what we're talking about. We're like, how do we dismantle this? Da. And so like, I didn't have to consciously think about advocacy work. But then I came back to Japan. I leave school. I enter the workforce, and like we don't talk about this stuff here at all. And then everything in the last month, it's been insane. It's almost like I'm in this like fever dream of sorts, where it's not just injustices outside of Japan that are coming, like globally that's coming out. It's like things going on here that I had no clue were happening every day.
Never shown.
Every day I see a new, because people are finding things now. People are like, wait, there's shit going on here. We need to, sorry for my language, but like there's things going on here and we need to talk about it. And I think that sort of like hypersensitivity, I want to keep it alive because like it had died for a year. And when I realized it had been like completely like silenced because of the culture of silence in this country. That was like a weird ego death of sorts. Like there was a part of me, I was like, oh wow, like I was also contributing to the problem of silence here. And yeah, now, you know, I don't want this conversation to end, but in order for it to keep going, there has to be a sustainable space for those conversations to happen. You know, there has to be a sort of collectiveness to it. And take it from different angles, like, you know, like,
I feel like it's important that we're talking about this like in Japan and making it accessible and like easy to understand and like visually aesthetic and like kind of putting it like in real life examples and everything. And then, you know, we're our age group, so that way it kind of spreads, and then people that maybe weren't so interested in things going on in Japan kind of realize, and then they're like, oh wait, what? I didn't agree to this kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, I feel like kind of what you were saying and what you're both saying reminded me of a conversation. I don't know if we were all there, maybe, but I feel like we'll definitely talk about it again. But it reminds me of the conversation we had about language and specifically like the difference between katakana and kanji, or just writing something in English. And I think that feels really unique to the conversation surrounding Black Lives Matter, anti-Blackness, social justice in Japan, is this idea that that's something that I might not realize because I'm not someone who was born and raised, or just like my level of Japanese is not there. But the difference between something being written in kanji and something being written in katakana, and any of you, if you want to speak on that too, because I feel like that, I think it might have been you, Lei, who used the term localizing social justice. And I thought that really struck me because it was not something that I'd considered so deeply in the conversation of translation of these materials, translations of these revolutionary texts by black authors and artists, and just like this idea that something just as simple as, you know, making a text post on Instagram is something you have to think about, because if you're saying buraku versus kokujin, there's a difference in the way that is heard by native Japanese speakers.
Even the way like Black Lives Matter is translated, right? Like kokujin no inochi ga daiji versus like Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter sounds more like something that is like a slogan almost, because it's in katakana. And I think like a lot of English words in Japan is already put onto like t-shirts or kind of like made as an aesthetic. And so like I was reading this tweet about it from like a couple translators, and they said to try not to use katakana as much as possible because it makes it more of a them problem than of a us problem, if that makes sense.
I remember, I'm forgetting his name, but the Nobel Peace writer, that
Nobel Peace Man,
that like got rid of. I'm like, yeah.
I'm like, wait, which guy? There's so many.
Nodding.
So it's the dude that wrote. So he went to England, and like Japan found out. He got his citizenship in England. Japan found out, and then was like, you got to choose. And he's like, bye. And then he won like this award for writing.
We'll figure that out, and we'll put it on our
Nobel Peace Prize. Yes.
Okay,
Oh,
so
let's-
wait, Kazuo Ishiguro?
Makes sense.
He's the one
yeah.
who wrote that book about those kids. The what?
Yeah, so we got our friend
Great.
Fatim out there giving us the facts. So it's Kazuo Ishiguro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
okay.
like, you know, he's Japanese, but then as soon as he got rid of that, like, because that's a very kanji name, but then like they start referring to him with his katakana, but is like, oh, but he was Japanese, so like it's the, you know, so it's kind of, it reminded me of that a little bit.
That's
I
interesting.
didn't know that.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
like
interesting.
katakana, and I think there's so many layers, I think, to this.
I think it's
Yeah.
in
Pick up.
actually
Yeah,
the archiving.
I mean, one of the points is like the whole idea of localization. So localization, it's a term that's used in let's say if you're like, you make a app or a video game in one language and you want it to be used by users in a different country, then you localize the software so that it reflects the linguistic and cultural standards of the user base. So it's a tech word and it's also a translation word. And I think with what Sophia and everyone else has mentioned, the social justice theory that I think a lot of us are familiar with is non-Japanese social justice theory, right? And so there's always, when I'm like trying to explain, for example, like if we were trying to explain like what is decolonial, like what is decolonization?
Yeah.
Like how do you explain that in Japanese? And it's uncomfortable to use direct translations. I think, and I was thinking about this last night, it's not because it's incorrect, but it's because we don't use that phrase. And so I think that's the whole thing with, it's important to turn it into kanji, to actually turn it into Japanese, because the more we say it in Japanese, the more normalized it becomes. And that's not, like, to me, I think that's not just an issue of contextualizing it within the Japanese consciousness, but I think it's also a way of like taking back our authority over knowledge, because I think katakana was okay, linguists, like I want to invite a linguist to talk about this, because this is all just like kanzen like my theory だけど katakana is used to explain, to label words that aren't Japanese.
Yeah, definitely.
And so the more reliant we become on katakana, I think the more unlocal our vocabulary becomes.
Yeah.
And when political language is all in katakana, that is, like you're saying, it's saying like, this isn't us.
Yeah.
Well,
But,
I mean,
yeah.
like, even for example, like with my name, like, because I grew up in Tokyo, right? And I was born and raised here, so most of my life was spent here. But I remember, like, I didn't have a kanji, and I had to write my name in katakana. And from that instant, like, the people who see my name, they're like, oh, she's foreign. She's, like, not one of us. And, like, I remember, like, really fighting with my parents. I'm like, why don't I have a kanji? I'm Japanese, too. And they're like, well, like, neither of us are Japanese, so you don't get that. And I was like, but why? Like, if we're, because my brother, he was born in America, and nobody ever was like, no, you need another name just because you're a different race. And so that was like my first lesson in like, oh, katakana is like a way of like othering people and kind of being like, you're different. And every time, like, even when we learn like Japanese, like we're taught like, okay, katakana is for anything that's not Japanese, that's not from Japan. Yeah.
I feel like that really reminds me of, I mean, it's kind of like a different thing, and I'm not going to go too deep into this because I don't know how accurate it is. But a lot of that has to do too with like, specifically with language, has to do with like gender theory and the idea that like in Japan too, there's like, I guess from a Western perspective, it's like Japan is more, or just Asian cultures are seen as more like feminine in some way. But there's a really interesting paper by an author whose name I don't remember, and I'll find it and post it somewhere. But she talks about how kind of in some way, like, I don't know how to say, the femininity of like hiragana and katakana had like origins in like actually like oppressive functions against women and like not teaching women kanji.
Yeah,
and there's this but and the mass there's some, I mean, I guess the ideas are that like there is something refined and feminine in kanji, and feminine not being in the way that we think of feminine from Western perspectives, but this idea that uncultured people can't read is the basis of like kanji, and so it's like only it's like a class thing too, but then of course it's all interconnected, intersectional, and the idea that it's like no accident that I feel like these different alphabets function differently and have like very, very distinct meanings, and the way that they're used is to oppress. And I feel like that translates directly into how they would be used for something like Black Lives Matter, where like I feel like I saw something, so I don't, not crediting someone, but talking about the fact that like Black Lives Matter is something that, what you were saying, it's not an outside problem because Black people are Japanese too. And like that's a lot of the issue of I think it was something that like you had posted about, I don't want to out Forbes, but I just outed Forbes when you talked about the thing that Forbes did. I don't know if you want to talk about that. I don't know if we should.
I don't mind.
Yeah,
or maybe this will kill my career. Who knows? We shall find out.
Blame it on me. Say I said it. Sophia's talking right now.
Okay, I'll do that. So Forbes basically had a talk, like a live Insta live. Insta live. I could have just said that.
Our Japanese is like Insta live.
Just so you know, we can't.
And it was between like a Japanese girl. I think she could possibly be half white, but I'm not sure. And she's a model. She is in a very popular agency in Japan, and she lives in New York. And she was asked to speak on Black Lives Matter. And the reason, like me and some of my friends took issue with this is because we felt like if there's only going to be one person on the panel, perhaps it should be someone who is Black, and who can speak to that experience in Japan or in America. Number two, there's Black people in her agency, and they didn't choose anybody who was Black. So it was like, was not very hard to look. But at the same time, I can understand that you don't, like, a Black person doesn't necessarily have to speak on something just because they're Black. In which case, it would be better to choose someone who is more knowledgeable about that topic, which after watching it, she was... unfortunately not. Sorry if you're watching this. I don't know what her name was. But you could do a little bit more reading instead of, quote, I have Black friends as the education. But she can tune in weekly. She can tune in. And that's not an attack on her or her agency or anything like that. Like, I have room to grow. Like, I'm sure they have room to grow. And it's not like that. It's just kind of what it was.
I think part of that issue too is like definitely what you were saying, that it's like it is not the responsibility of Black people to speak on this issue if they're not being compensated for it, or if they don't want to. But I think that is the issue with companies like jumping on this right now and like having Black Lives Matter be a bandwagon, is that it's something that it's like there's no, like, it's because it's a trend, it's like, well, of course company is going to do this, and that there's no, something that we talked about, there's no people behind something like a big brand name. It's the company takes the flack for their mistakes, and there's no people behind it. And so like something like that, with if you have a panel, if you come out with a statement being like, we've thought this through, this person feels like the best person to speak on this topic for whatever reason, then at least it's like, oh, you put some thought into it, rather than just like, oh God, we have to do this as fast as possible so we're not canceled, and that being like the extent of it, and then never again.
Also, like, for me in my lifetime, this is the first time, like, yakuni, that I've seen so much conversation about Black people, about race, about inequality in Japan, ever. So that's like I know like many other friends who have grown up in Japan, like, we've waited for this conversation our whole fucking lives. So when it's finally here, I feel bad that there is this pressure that like people need to do better, but it's also like I've waited like 22, 23 years for this moment, right? Yeah.
I think this is like a good moment to like maybe talk about what we have planned. Because it's
Beautiful
almost
transition.
like we were
That was
waiting
great.
for this to happen. Ooh, I feel like a NPR host today. But yeah, well, we talked about localization and contextualizing like social justice discourse. So just to like wrap that point up is, so we're Commu is a team of at the moment we're a team of 8 people. All of us are bilingual with different leanings in terms of which one we're better at, but we're all bilingual. We're all connected to Japan in Japanese culture in one way or another, but we've also had access to a lot of incredible critical like theory and text, and we have that we've been exposed to that. So
and access to other countries too.
Access, we have 2 people that are in graduate schools in the US and UK. Like we have resources. Individually like hella resources. And so like I think important goal is how do we not simply translate that, but like actually like root it in Japan, and like one of my like big Commu dream is like, like I want people to feel like they can in Japanese or in English talk about politics and social justice in Japan and feel like they have command over that theory. Because right now I'm still borrowing so much from outside, and I can still sense that I'm like not fully capable of explaining it in the context of Japan. It's like still like soto no theory, soto no concept. So that's like something that's really important, I think, for Commu. What about
I kind of wanted to just like build off on like the soto no concept. It's like we individually and collectively like have so much reach and like ability to go to like the soto no like areas that we don't know and like find out about like Black experiences and like various job fields and stuff, and like through that it's like the word will get more out because we're reaching fields that or sectors, I don't know what the word is, but like sectors that we just don't have like the arm length for, but then like we kind of just combine a bunch of arms, and we got that reach.
I love.
I almost want to read. I want to read what you wrote in our values thing. I'm just gonna throw this in just because it relates, and also you just Lay wrote a beautiful list of values, and I wrote them down. But kind of relating to what you were saying with like outside things, like how do we amplify voices, and specifically Black voices in Japan as part of that, but voices in general too. And something you wrote was, actually, let's see if I can read my own handwriting. But you said, Commu is committed to carving our space for the voices, efforts, knowledge at risk of being erased or minimized by imperial institutions, and amplifying citizen action that is delegated to the fringes of Japanese society. And I feel like that really encapsulates a lot of that feeling of, just give you a little clap for your eloquent writing. Very beautiful. Yeah, nice.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Yeah, I mean, everything else too, you wrote so beautifully. Just read all of it. But yeah, I feel like that is kind of part of keeping this like flame alive, is amplifying voices. So it's not just like the four of us and then the four people who are not in this room talking on this. It's like, how do we speak on this and then spread it to other people and then other people, and then and how do we, I mean, one of the hopes too is to eventually have people come and speak with us here, and hopefully we can compensate them for that.
One day we will compensate with Sophia's amazing onigiri. Is that showing? Yes.
I like how they
model it. There you go. Vegan, if you want the recipe, hit me up.
I feel like that too kind of connects the idea of like the media element, which you're kind of our media girl.
Okay. You are.
Well, I think like kind of what I was saying before, but now there's like a huge movement in Japan as well, like of brands, of big companies also speaking out. And it is kind of unfair to put that pressure of they need to do it right. Like they do need to do it right. But it's also like, I think that maybe sometimes I feel like I need to be the voice that I want to see as well, or else things won't change. And it's kind of unfair to compare it to where America is. And in that kind of vein, I feel like the media is what we consume all the time, right? Whether it's on our phones, like on Spotify, like on the train. There's so much media that we consume every day. And I think that I want to help, なんて言うんだろう, like add more voices that haven't been heard enough, add more information, help uplift other voices, other communities, other organizations that are doing this as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and like do that through like Instagram, do that through our website, do that through this like podcast, like
space.
Through our website as well.
Yeah. Something we talked about too was specifically with social media. Another thing that was what's next was like archiving this moment, making it so it's not a moment, and how it kind of ties to the past and the present, what might happen in the future. And so that, kind of right now, something that we've all noticed is there are a bunch of social justice, social media that have popped up, like these accounts, and like a lot of them are specifically about translating Black Lives Matter content. And something we talked about was talking to the people who run those accounts and finding out how many people are involved in that. Is it one person? Is it many? What inspired them to create this account? Why did they do it? And then how do they sustain their work? How do we potentially help them sustain that work? And then how do we just simply record that work took place at all? And creating some sort of timeline or some sort of archive just to go back and like in those moments where we're like feeling dormant. I really like that. I wrote that down.
I think also like how to help people is like really, or how to help like these kind of social media kind of accounts that have come up is really important because it's not a competition, right? I think a lot of people come on, they're like, well, we're different because we do this, and we're different because we do that. That's great to be different. I think that's beautiful. But
great.
I love that.
But, in the same vein as like capitalism and everything else, it doesn't have to be a competition of who can do it better.
Exactly.
It's Commu is about community, right? It's about how do we help ourselves, how do we help everybody together.
Everyone going towards the same thing.
The same North Star.
That same North Star.
Oh my God. Bring it back there.
Yes. And do we have any, I guess, the resource list too? You want to talk on that, Rachel?
Yeah. So another aspect of Commu that we talked about, we discussed, I'm just like, wait, we? But we talked about, building a resource of Black-owned businesses so that someone, like, it's just, like, you can't use the excuse, like, oh, I don't know, though. Like, I don't think there's any around. Like, nope. Look, like, ご覧ください.
Deadass, ご覧ください.
Like, so, and then I think with that also, and also kind of similar to what I was saying last time I spoke, about, like, getting that reach, if we could, like, have those business owners come on and, like, we get to speak, if they want to, of course, and get to speak about their experience, I mean, like, as individuals in Japan, but then also in whatever business field they're doing, if it's, like, food and beverage or, like, I don't know, like, clubs, I guess that's kind of the same, but clothes, apparel, and then they can kind of, because they're, like, the 実際の eyes, that are seeing what's happening behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just such an important and like wonderful perspective to be able to have and be aware of.
And to add to that too, like Black creatives in Japan as well. You know, Black photographers, Black directors, Black painters, Black sound producers. You know, I feel like that, like the media industry in Japan is overwhelmingly, I was gonna say white, but like what is the like equivalent of that?
Well, it's homogenous.
Like, it's very homogenous. It's a lot
Yeah.
of like oji-san, Japanese men type of vibes.
Yeah.
Osan,
Osan.
Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Osan
No offense to the
vibes.
osan out there.
Yeah.
Mad
All
love.
the
But,
osan.
but you know.
we need more.
Yeah.
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 Speaking of, like, there was this beautiful film made by a Black director. I completely forgot what it's called. But it's about this like young Black boy who grows up in Japan in like the Inaka. Born this way or born with it. I want to say it was.
I feel like I've heard of that maybe.
It's really great.
We got snaps. Is that the right title?
Okay.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes. We got like a live Google.
It's a very, very beautiful film. I
Yeah.
genuinely encourage everyone to please go watch it. But yeah, that's one of the reasons, right? That having Black creatives is important. You can't substitute Black voices. You can't take from Black voices and be like, oh yeah, this is the Black perspective. Like, that's not how you do it. Why can't you just call Black people, right? Why can't you just hire Black creatives to do what they're
Seriously.
already been doing, right? Yeah.
I had another thing just to add. Sorry, kind of going back to.
Yeah.
Was so like with the businesses thing. Another kind of like, wow, this would be great. So let's say like it's like a restaurant and they get regulars all the time. They're like friends with the okyakusan that like maybe wouldn't be normally like presented with all of the deep information that we know about like Black Lives Matter and like anti-racism.
Yeah.
And then they see like I just feel like it's like another way to infiltrate. Sounds aggressive, but you know, slide into like Japanese populations that we also wouldn't have to like you know like kazoku toka.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, like kind of the hope is too that it's not just eventually in the future, it's not just in these spaces where this conversation is happening. Like I want my mom, who's Japanese, to be talking to her friends about it when I'm not around. That would be the goal. If my mom came to me and was like, yeah, we were talking about like anti-Blackness and like talking about racism, and that sounds like a joke.
Oh my god. That
But
would
I feel
be
like
a dream.
I see it for my mom. I see it for her.
Yeah.
But I think that I think that's what's so important about creating the spaces to begin with and talking about the language and being really intentional with what we're doing is that not just for us, but hopefully like we feel confident enough to be in this space and that to give other people the confidence. And also something that we had talked about in the beginning too is just like having a space like this too. It's like it's doing a lot of the work, but also giving ourselves like a place of healing within all of this work and like kind of giving just creating a space for ourselves too to feel safe and to feel connected to others and kind of just everything that Rachel was touching on with like that it really is about community and connection and that is what I feel like, to speak from the eye, but I felt from you all that I felt like I was going to be missing when I moved here and that I was like really afraid I wouldn't find but even just being in this room with all of you and all of you people that I don't know I feel connected and I feel like that's really important to me.
Wow. Okay, let me just make sure. So we have 5 minutes, but like we've talked. This is like literally, it's like this is the beginning, and it's like, you know, like we're here, and like right now we talked about like just like a few of the things that we're trying to do, and right now it's the 4 of us here plus the 4 other people that are you know, that we're connected through the screen. But it's not just us, right? If there are other people that are also in their own ways working towards the greater good, towards healing, towards liberation, like like y'all have homies here, like, you know, like let's do this together, like reach out to us, like connect with us,
and it can be at your own pace, at your own capacity. You don't have to feel like it's like a full-time job or like a huge commitment.
It's doing the thing every day.
Mm-hmm.
Doing the
but
thing every day.
Do we want to talk about some music?
So we were saying maybe we'll always end with like something like music related since we're here in Tide FM. So Rachel,
shout out to Tide FM.
Also big
shout out,
huge thank you, like
thank
the
you so
privilege
much.
that we would not
I
be
love
here
you guys so
without.
much.
Amazing, so much love.
But yeah, like our exit song was your idea. So what's our exit song today?
So I think it's just not today. I think it's like
forever?
The theme song.
Whoa.
So this used to be my entrance song, but I really think that Commu deserves it, and it's "Can I Kick It" by Tribe.
I love that.
So
right?
our uchiage, we're playing that.
Facts.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's always "Yes You Can." Always.
Really?
Yeah. I was so hyped. And I was like this because I was in the shower and I was like, oh.
Well,
let's
see you guys again. That's an amazing song choice.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it's like new people, yes you can, different topics you want to join, yes you